Welcome to the Biz Coach Show, brought to you by My Biz Coaches. Our show is focused on giving entrepreneurs the edge they need to succeed. Learn more at mybizcoaches.com. Your host is Eric Whitmore, owner of My Biz Coaches. Eric is a business coach, serial entrepreneur, author, and speaker. Eric is passionate about sharing his knowledge and insights with small business owners so they can transform their businesses and achieve peak success. Learn more at mybizcoaches.com. Well, Eric, it's always great to hang out with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, David. How about yourself?
I am doing great. And I think we've got a really good episode here. And I think, one of the things that we get questions on a lot, it's the Biz Coach Show, right? You talk about coaching clients. And so a lot of times people wonder, hey, when should I be thinking about getting a business coach? And so we get that question so much. I think it makes sense to have a whole episode where we kind of talk about that and really kind of what is the value that a business coach brings. There's some myths out there that I think we want to address as well. And so really excited to dive into this with you here today. So I think let's go ahead and dive right in. And I'll
David,
just start with that. Oh, go ahead.
Before we jump in, I got something I got to say.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah. I don't know if you recognize this yet or not, but this is episode number 27. So we're officially a half year old.
Oh, there you go. Nice. That's great. I missed that. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm actually, I was pretty excited to be able to share that with some people recently. And somebody mentioned, so that makes you a half year old. And I'm like, yes, we are.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, very cool. Yeah. That the year's flown by and it's been great. We've had a lot of great guests. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
So, well, awesome. Well, hey, for today, let's actually dive in. We'll start with that initial question, which is, when is the right time for a business owner to consider hiring a business coach?
The right answer is now.
Okay. Nice.
Wherever you are in your business development process, as soon as you've acknowledged that there may be a consideration that you might benefit from a coach, the answer is now.
Okay.
I would say I say that obviously in jest to some degree, but in reality, it's very true. In my experience we've literally worked with people. We're working with a startup that hasn't even generated their first dollar in revenue. That's usually not a client that we would go after per se, at least not at My Biz Coaches. Although I do have coaches that enjoy working with that group. Generally, we're looking for somebody who's established and in business, and we're hoping to grow and scale. That's typically where our target audience would be. But, this particular, they had a good business plan in place. They were funded, meaning that they had money, access to capital to help support the growth and make the strategic decisions to do certain things with their business as they're preparing. So they look like a good client for us, and we're happy to be working with them and excited about their mission and their project, which is another piece that as a coach, allows us the ability to kind of, who do we want to work with? And they have something that we were really excited about and we're supportive of. So we were happy to help them. But trying not to be facetious, the reality is now, if you're thinking you might need a coach, and here's a couple of things that I would suggest. If you are second guessing yourself, if you are questioning whether or not a decision that you've made was the right decision, then a coach would be a great person to be able to bounce those ideas off of, even if it's nothing more than just corroborating with somebody and getting some validity. It's like, yes, that's the right thing. I would highly recommend you consider this. There's a lot of value in that, as particularly as a small business owner. I would actually go back to my days as when we started, Just Right Wireless was a wireless entity that we had many years ago. I think 2004 when we started that. So when I had Just Right Wireless, I remember when I had the opportunity to buy a second store. It was an existing store from somebody else. I wouldn't say necessarily a competitor. It was on the other side of the valley, but I had the opportunity. It was a really great price. It was literally I think we bought it for $15,000 and we stepped into a cash flow situation that was making $4,000 a month. So it was a no-brainer to buy it. The brothers that owned it it was a family business that was, they had another family business. I think it was in landscaping or something, and they wanted to go and work on that. And this was like a 4-year project they'd been working on. They're like, yeah, 15,000, you can have everything in the store. Well, there's $25,000 of inventory and a cash flow of $4,000 a month. I was like, yeah, we could do that. That works. 15,000, here you go. But my point is that as I grew and expanded, every time I would make a decision like that, it was literally, I'm the CEO, the CFO, and the COO. And as the CEO, I'd have this great idea. Let's go ahead and buy this store. And I'd turn to the CFO, this guy right here on my shoulder, and I'd say, hey, can we fund this? Do we have the money to do that? And he'd be like, yeah, we can figure out how to make that work, move some money around. That's fine. Okay. Then I turn to my COO and say, okay, we got a new store. Do we have a manager for it? Can we find a new manager and execute on that and get the results from it? And he'd be like, yeah, we can do that. I was making all my decisions in a
vacuum. Yeah.
Vacuum. Thank you. And the issue is that there's nobody to vet those ideas, right? And occasionally I'd reach out to certain people and ask for advice, but they don't know anything about my business, right? So I'm getting advice. My wife was happy to offer advice, my spouse, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's necessarily well-grounded advice. And when they don't really truly understand your business from the inside out, what kind of information can they really provide for you? And so, I guess really as a kind of full circle in this question, if you feel like you would benefit from having somebody provide guidance and insight, it's time to get a coach.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine anybody not feeling like there'd be value in that. So I think there's always an opportunity. I don't care how good you operate, there's things in your business that could be better. And what you really want and what you really benefit from is an objective observer who can, from the outside, look in at your business and recognize the gaps. And quite honestly, David, you can relate to this. As business owners ourselves, we're emotionally attached to our business.
Right. Yeah.
And as good as a coach as I believe I am, as good as I am at seeing problems in other people's businesses, even in my own business, I need a coach to help me, to hold me accountable. How many conversations you and I had about me with you and you with me about our businesses individually and saying, hey, give me some insight on this because I could benefit from some feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where the real value of a coach comes into play. I don't care how disciplined you are. Yeah, there's value in having somebody hold you accountable if that's something you benefit from. But at the end of the day, it's somebody to bounce ideas off of who understands your business and give you good, honest feedback.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Makes sense to me. Just kind of as you're talking about that, knowing some of the clients that you've worked with, can you share maybe just one or two success stories of businesses that you've worked with that have really benefited from your work as a coach?
Yeah. So I've probably said on this show, I would say at least a half a dozen, maybe a dozen times, that one of the things that most people come to us for are, hey, I got a leads problem. I need more leads. I need more clients. I need more people to talk to. And you've heard my spiel on that, right? It's I know you think you have a lead problem. I'm going to suggest you probably have a conversion problem. And my background in sales, that kind of resonates, right? But the reality is as true as that is, one of my favorite clients I like to reference is a digital marketing agency. They didn't need any help from me for marketing. What they benefited from, what I was able to provide them was, there was a little bit of sales conversations and things like that, conversion of sales. But really what it was is the owner was younger. I was going to say like early to mid 30s, first time owning a business, right? Couple years into it, had some really good success, but was stalling out in the growth. And one of his opportunities was the managing people, right? Holding people accountable, challenging them to their expectations, and I set an expectation, holding them, challenging them to make sure that they follow through. And so there was some opportunity to, how do I do that? And then how to have those tough conversations. And so in the process of doing that, he's adjusted the business dramatically. And when I first started working with them, I'm going to say they did 300,000-ish. Now they're pushing $1 million in gross revenue. So pretty significant story. And a lot of that, like I said, it wasn't because of marketing. That wasn't what we focused on. Our coaching was about, there was some other things that we tied into it, but a lot of it was leadership development, skill sets on how to coach people, how for that owner to coach their employees, right? And how to delegate effectively was another big thing, right? How to manage that process more effectively. So pretty significant opportunity for them. And another one I turned to is a relatively newer client, about 6 months in, and the translation company, they do language translation, And when I first started working with them, they were asked, what, but actually they did a survey, and why was it that you chose to work with Eric? Because we were trying to do some due diligence and understand why our clients are choosing to work with us. And the feedback was from the owner that she felt like she would have figured out her own path. She's already relatively successful business. They were doing just short of $1 million when I started working with them. And, she acknowledged, I probably would have figured this out on my own, but by working with a coach, I feel like I'm getting there much faster.
Yeah.
And already in 6 months, we're 6 months in our relationship, and they're trending, I want to say trending 1.3 or 1.4. So what, a 50% increase year over year in sales. So certainly, and there's definitely, we're doing a lot of work on marketing and sales. But there's also, again, some internal operational systems and processes. So some great stories. I love to highlight those, success stories. We have lots of them, but those are two that stick out to me.
Yeah. No, I think those are good examples too. I mean, not only did you help them achieve success, but you also, kind of demonstrate that sometimes you can misidentify a problem as a business owner, and then you spend your time and effort on the wrong thing, which a coach can certainly help with. And then also, it doesn't necessarily mean something's broken, but man, can we get to that next milestone faster? So I think those are great examples, maybe things that people who are hesitant about getting a coach maybe don't think about. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I would add to that one last thing, David, is that, you may figure it out on your own, but how much missed revenue, how many expenses, how much cost are you going to incur? How many potential people might you lose in the process of figuring it out on your own, when with the right coach, you theoretically would be able to accelerate that by, let's say if it was going to take you 3 to 5 years to figure it out, how about figuring it out in 18 months?
Right. Yeah. Good point. Yep. Well, speaking of, things that, people are maybe hesitant on when it comes to getting a coach, of course, I think we got to go there, which is the cost, right? So, while we provide some great free information on the show, in a coaching relationship, right, there is a cost associated with that. So I think let's maybe break that down a little bit in the sense of, how do you address that concern or objection from somebody that might be watching or listening to this thinking, man, I might want to get a coach, but, what's the cost to benefit or the ROI of hiring that coach? And is it really worth it in the end?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would tell you, I don't know that I would have said this had I not had the background and experience that I had in the martial arts when I was much younger. I was as you know, I was a professional kickboxer and I had a lot of success. I had success as a fighter, but when I got a really good coach, my success, I couldn't tell you what the power it went to, if it was 10x or 100x or whatever, but I certainly wouldn't have won the titles that I won had I not had that type of a coach. Yeah. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know what that was going to look like. But I will tell you, in retrospect, when I look back, I believe that a good coach has that same impact on a business. And, so, if you were going to ask me, say, what do you charge? As you know, our initial fee to engage with a decent sized business is usually about $1,000 a month, $997 a month. And then we typically ask for a percentage of what we help increase the revenue. And we do that because we believe in their ability to get the result, because we do have clients that pay as much as $5,000 a month to work with us. Some even more than that. It's not uncommon to be in the $2,500 to $5,000 a month, which would definitely, for many of the people listening in this call, be outside their budget, what they could afford, right? So we also have programs that are group coaching, where we aggregate people that are in this similar path under, where the coaching is very similar for those individuals as they're developing and growing their business. It's a lot of marketing, high level marketing and sales conversations. And so we can aggregate that group of people and put them in a much lower package, maybe a few $100s to, $500 a month or something like that. Make it more affordable for those smaller companies or smaller businesses that, even solopreneurs in some cases. We have an entry level program. It's a very basic entry level program, but it's a lot of information that we provide, and it's only $97 a month. So show me a program for $97 a month that you don't get the value back on that. I think you'd be hard pressed not to get the return on that. But, as I shared in the previous example, just my two clients that I referenced earlier, 300 to 600 to let's call it $1 million. over the course of 2 years. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they were paying $1,500 a month. That would be a reasonable program from where we were at that time. So $1,500 a month over the course of 12 months is $18,000. 2 years of that is $36,000, and they went from $300,000 to $600,000, or from $600,000 to, let's call it $1 million. So a $700,000 return. Actually, theoretically, it's those 300 and then 700 in the second year. So it's actually $1 million return of 2 years of coaching with us for the bargain basement price of just $36,000.
Yeah.
So, and
like math works. I'm not a mathematician, but that seems decent.
I'm not even as good as I am with numbers. I'm not quick enough to figure out the return on that, but I got to say it's pretty, very good. And even the client that I referenced, the other client I referenced, let's say they're up 400,000 year over year. And, you do 400,000 versus what they will pay for this year. And I won't divulge that, but it's going to be less than $20,000. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
So, 400,000 versus $20,000. So that's pretty significant when you can kind of compare the return on investment. So now that's gross revenue. That's not profits, but in the grand scheme of things, you can see that that's very, very manageable. Very good ROI, right? Makes sense. So, I think, like I said, we've got different programs to fit different budgets. And more importantly, you'd be hard pressed not to make back the money in something, right? I think that the biggest problem that most people have when they do coaching is that if there's a miss in the return, it's often in the lack of execution. So if you buy a course, one of the problems with buying a course, and we do sell courses as well, but one of the problems with selling a course is that sometimes somebody's not there to challenge you and make sure you take the execution, right? And that's where the loss is. Whereas with a coach, you have a coach guiding you through that process and encouraging you to take those steps, as well as holding you accountable and making sure you're moving through those steps. But
yeah, no, that's a good point, right? Going back to your martial arts example, as you could try to learn, kickboxing through YouTube. I mean, you could, sure, but it's Absolutely. Totally different than somebody saying, no, your stance is off, or you got to get more hip, right? And actually coaching you through those steps, and and then you got somebody actually, sparring with you too. So you're, challenging you on those things and really making it practical and realistic. So I think, it's a great correlation, bringing it back to your initial point.
Absolutely.
So awesome. Well, Eric, you talked about kind of these, different approaches or options that are available based on, budget or need. I think one of the things that's, really unique about what you're doing at MyBizCoaches is normally when you get a coach, right, it's an individual, but you do something a little bit different. So maybe tell us a little bit more about that and kind of how a business can find a coach that maybe specializes in exactly what they need.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think I've said it before a handful of times, but I'll reference it. For us at MyBizCoaches, our niche, our what I would determine as our ideal client is a service-based business that is in the 250,000 in revenue to about $1.5 million. That's our sweet spot. And there's a very specific reason for that. And I'll be honest with you, it's because these are usually really good. These are service-based businesses. Owners are really good at what they do. Maybe don't quite have the business skill set to grow and scale, right? They've done to a certain point, like they've grown from up to 300,000 or 400,000, and then there's kind of a wall there. There's a wall there at 250 when you go from 0 to 100. Then there's 100 to 250. Those are two thresholds. When you get 250 and you try and go to about 400,000 to 500,000, there's a wall there. It's an imaginary wall, and it's different for everybody. But it's at that point, how many employees do you have, right? And it's how well can you manage 2 or 3 other personalities? It's what other categories or not categories, what other areas of your business are necessary for you, and what kind of experience do you have in that? So, that's one of the things we help a business owner understand is, okay, you've never managed people before, or not, you've never managed, but you've never managed a group of 5 employees, let's say, for the sake of argument. That's something to consider when you go to grow and scale your business. So it's something that we want to make sure that we uncover. What is your level of comfort managing multiple locations or multiple people, or, whatever that might look like? Additionally, if you've got that scope and understanding, One of the things that we learn, and I learned this as a life coach before I became a business coach. If you have we'll call it a bad habit. If you have a bad habit in your personal life, it will show up in your business. So what we find often is if we have clients that are spenders in their personal life, meaning they like to spend when they may not necessarily have all the resources available to them, they have a tendency to do the same thing in their business world. Well, if you struggle with managing your budget when you make, I don't know, $75,000 a year, how much more of a challenge could that potentially be if you struggle when you're bringing in $500,000 a year? That may not be in profit, right, but it's $500,000 going through your bank account. Right. And understanding, and that's even more important now. What's the difference between what's profit and what's revenue? Right. Because I have revenue of $500,000, but I may have expenses of $400,000, which means the profits that I can live off of and use for my personal spending habits is only $100,000, or actually less than that, because I got to make sure I pay taxes on that too. Right. So in the grand scheme of things, I really need to know how to manage that and balance it out. Again, this is something I want to know when I go to engage with a client, so I can give them the appropriate coaching. Do we have a good accountant in place? Do we have a good bookkeeper in place to manage those? Or are you trying to do it by yourself? Right. Because that presents yet another challenge. Right. What's your propensity for technology? How comfortable you are adapting technology and implementing into your business. That's going to be an important component. So there's a series of things and questions that we ask when we're onboarding a client, or at least engaging with a client initially. We show them all the things we can do. And through that series of conversations, we uncover how much they're using technology. We uncover how comfortable they are with marketing, how comfortable they are with sales, how comfortable they are with the back end part of the business, how comfortable they are in a leadership role and managing people. And then from that conversation, from that initial consultation, we can take that assessment, we can determine where they're going to have other opportunities, and then we can actually get a plan together that we know that's going to fit for that particular client. So it's really important to do that due diligence. And if you're doing interview coaching, if you're interviewing business coaches, I would strongly encourage you that the coach should be asking you a lot of questions. And they're just shutting up and listening, because if they're not asking enough questions, they're not going to be able to guide you in the right direction. And if I would say any one thing, if I was going to hang my hat on something that I feel like I've done well, and my business coaches have done well, is that we get a lot of kudos for being meeting clients where they are, as opposed to trying to force them through a process. There's something to be said for process. I know you're a process guy, a big time process guy, right? And I'm 100% supportive of it, but I also recognize that not every business, right, just like not every person is going to fit into that process. And so when you are analyzing how that relationship is going to work, and you look at the business and look at the owner of the business or the key leaders in the organization, are they going to adapt to this process, or am I going to have to adapt the process slightly to make it work better? And a good coach should be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I may be a little off base here, but I think one of the things that's unique too about what you do is you've got all these coaches with different levels of experience, different industries,
yes,
things like that. So, you may get halfway through that consult and start thinking, man, I know that this person has this level of experience on this, and maybe we tag team it, or I bring them in for part of the coaching, or you've got all these different options. Whereas if you're only working with one individual coach, they don't have this team of coaches. You're one person's expertise versus an entire team, which I think is again pretty valuable if you're looking at different coaching solutions.
Yeah, it's a great point, and absolutely one that we use in our marketing. It's the sheer and simple fact that to your point, if I go and I get, the average coach, generally speaking, I've got a coach, right?
Yeah.
So going back to my analogy that I used earlier with the two different people to reference, right? I've only got one coach, right? How that individual, their style, right, is that's another thing to consider from a personality fit, right?
Yeah.
I tend to be a tad bit more aggressive than most, but from a coach's perspective, I keep it intact, right? As a business owner, I'm a bit more aggressive, but from a coaching perspective, I tie that down and I make sure that I'm like I keep it even keel. However, I will say, if you're asking for my opinion, I'm a little bit more aggressive, and this is where I would lean to.
Yeah.
And I make that clear in that statement. Consequently, if I knew that the client didn't really resonate with that, I would adjust my statement accordingly. But to your point, when we partner up clients with coaches, that's a consideration that I factor in. And for instance, David, you're more conservative, and consequently, if I had a client that was very conservative, I would absolutely take you and partner you with somebody like that, because I know that that would be a better psychological fit, right? From that perspective, there'd be a better mesh and you would know enough to push and challenge, but still know that there's a boundary there, and be more cognizant of that with that individual.
Sure.
Whereas I have other coaches that are probably a little bit more aggressive, and consequently would not be an ideal fit. Yeah, great point.
Awesome. Well, good stuff. And I think, just to end cap that and move on, I think, you obviously would have coaches maybe with different specializations too. So not just maybe industry experience, but maybe they specialize in marketing or finance, right? And again, that's a unique thing that you should be looking for, whether it's My Biz Coaches, which of course would be your preference, but any coach that you work with is, look for specializations too. If or at least have a really good hunch that this particular thing is a challenge in your business, look for somebody that specializes in that. And there's a time for a generalist, there's a time for a specialist, and it's important to know where you're at in that spectrum.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I would add to that, for instance, Jim Wilkerson is, we've had him on the show. He got a lot of experience in finance, wealth management, and personal finance as well. And, if I had a client who would, who probably needs a little bit more of a financial tune-up, let's say, for lack of a better term, that would be somebody I would want them to partner with Jim. Because Jim's definitely got a good eye for that, and would help guide that. And I think he's got some systems and processes that he would introduce to the client, would help that client adapt to that better. And to your point, because if that's his niche and his background, he would be a better fit for that particular client. Yeah, great point.
Absolutely. Well, Eric, I think any other myths or maybe things that you hear or see when you're working with people that are a little bit apprehensive about getting a coach that you think we should address today and debunk?
I'm not sure about the myths. I would say misconceptions are definitely, a coach is not going to tell you what to do. A coach is going to make suggestions.
Yeah.
Right. If a client came back and said, well, because of your coaching, I'm failing, I'd be like, well, you weren't listening then, because at no point did I give you direction that said you should absolutely do this. It's still your decision. It's your business. Right. And anybody who would look to kind of push that off on a coach. Now, can you get bad guidance from a coach? Absolutely. Can you get bad direction from a coach? Certainly. But at the end of the day, if you take that bad advice and you act on it, that's on you. And that's not a disclaimer, right? It's just literally, it's you know your business, right? Yeah. What you're looking for from a coach, and this is what I keep kind of reinforcing with people, is what you should be looking for from a coach is an objective observer who sees things from the outside in and says, hey, there's a gap here, there's an opportunity here, we should probably capitalize on it. Or there's a gap here, there's a concern here, we should probably correct it. And that's what you really want a coach to be able to do. You want a coach to hold you accountable. A coach can do that too, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the real value, in my opinion. Yes, if you need somebody to challenge you to go do something you need to do, I get it. And there's value in that too from time to time. But realistically, if that's what you're hiring a coach for, it's the wrong reason, in my opinion.
Yeah.
My humble opinion, right? I really believe that in reality, what you're looking for is somebody to challenge your thoughts, right? And if there's any accountability, it's holding you accountable to your own thoughts. I mean, if I have an idea of what I want to do with my business, and in all honesty, there's 4 or 5 people I call on a regular basis, you being one of them. And if I've got something that I want to vet out, I know there's certain things that you're very good at, and I will call you and I say, hey, David, I need your 2 cents on this. What do you think? Yep. Right? Because that's more valuable to me than anything. Because when I'm trying to make a decision about my business and I'm struggling, I often offered ideas that allowed me to pivot my business accordingly. You've offered suggestions that I'm like, I didn't think of, because again, I'm emotionally attached to the business. I'm involved in the day-to-day. it's hard for me to step back and look objectively all the time. I try, right? I'm disciplined to do it, but it's not all the time I'm going to be able to do that, especially if there's something I'm very connected to or very passionate about for some reason. I had a client that we separated ways, and I didn't want to, but it was the appropriate thing to do. And I had that conversation with 2 or 3 people, and they're like, yeah, it sounds to me it's probably time for you to focus on something, make your pivot, right. And do something different. Because it was, and I wasn't something I just said, I'm just going to do this. I held on probably a few months longer than I should have, but the reality was the time was right. And after a couple of conversations, it kind of said, yeah, it's probably the time to move on.
Yeah. For sure.
I think I think that's a big one. What's the misconception is it's not an accountability coach. Yes, you can have an accountability coach, but I mean, you have reminders on your phone for that stuff, right? I mean, I will say, if you were talking about fitness, do I need somebody to drag me to the gym? If I do, I'm probably not really focused on improving.
Yeah.
If it's that hard for me to do the stuff I know I'm supposed to do, the reality is it's probably not that important to me.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, if you're asking a coach to hold you accountable, that's kind of a problem. Now, if you have a certain project that you're working on, you need guidance through all day long, right?
Yeah.
Because it's something you're not familiar with. It's something you're not comfortable with. It's somebody could come in and help you through the strategic decision-making process that you have to do and give you guidance on certain aspects that you're not familiar with. That totally makes sense, right? Yeah. But that's not necessarily accountability. That's just, helping move through a process in your business that you're not familiar with.
Yeah. Well, and certainly as a coach, you also don't want to be working with a client that doesn't have the right mindset. They're not willing to grow. They're not disciplined in the recommendations that you're providing. And so I think that's another piece of it is, you want to make sure it's valuable for you, both from a results perspective, but also your time, right? So if the client's
Absolutely.
not there, then, there's no amount of coaching that's going to get them there. There's something deeper that needs to be addressed before maybe they're in that right space.
Absolutely. And I mean, and like I said, that really transfers over into all aspects of our lives, not just our business. As I said earlier, I typically recognize that somebody has a bad habit in their personal life. It always carries over in their business. I say always, I'm going to say 99% of the time.
Yeah.
It's seldom that you don't see it in the business. And if they're lazy about something, I say lazy, right? We're all lazy to some degree or another with certain things. And it's usually stuff that we just don't like, right? It's not in our wheelhouse. But as a business owner, you need to be smart enough to realize is like, hey, this is something I don't like to do, but it's a necessity for the business to be successful. So I need to make sure that I have somebody on my team who's capable and willing to do it because I don't want to do it. And that could be bookkeeping, which is extremely important, right? Obviously, you can't not do those things and still be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So cool. Well, I think just getting toward the end here, we've talked about certainly in the short term, there's an opportunity for a coach to come in, make some big movement. You've talked about some incredible, revenue growth that you've been able to accomplish in a very short amount of time. I'm gonna go a little bit left field here, Eric, but I think you'll be able to relate to it. Okay, I don't scare you too much, but I was thinking about this, and just last night we found a new TV show. Okay, it's called Crack Addict, and it's not what it sounds like. It's about chiropractors. Okay, so it's it's like the Dr. Pimple Popper equivalent of chiropractic.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're watching it, and I got to thinking, and I think we both had our experience with chiropractic over the years. Is if you go in one time for an adjustment, you might get some immediate relief, but if you don't maintain that adjustment, if you don't get on a care plan and go back regularly, your body's just going to default back to how it was before the adjustment, right? And so, kind of a weird parallel here, but as we're talking about kind of a long-term coach is, you can hire a coach, see some big results, but if you're not maintaining that coaching relationship over a longer period of time, what I've seen, unfortunately, and I'm sure you have too, is, hey, thanks, you got me over that, hurdle. I'm good. They break off the relationship, and then kind of things start going back to the way they were for a number of reasons. But I think that can happen for business owners too. So maybe just talk for a little bit about that, not chiropractic, but the long-term coaching, benefit and how businesses can really continue to grow and benefit from that coaching relationship.
Yeah, it's great. A great question. And let me add to this too. We recognize now as my biz coaches, we're 4 years in. And as you know, I started out as a consultant and pivoted into my biz coaches.
Yep.
And as we did that, I realize now, as I've got a few clients that have been around with me since that first year, and I only had a couple there because it was a consulting business. There's only a couple of them, but they're still with me. And what I've recognized is that the nature of the relationship changes over time for two reasons. The first one being is what we call the law of familiarity. It comes from the life coaching world. But what it basically means is the more familiar I am with you, the less that I take your coaching under consideration. So anybody who's married knows exactly what I'm talking about. And the longer you're married, the more you can relate with what I just said. Heaven forbid I give my wife coaching about what she does in her job. And the irony is that I do that often by default. I can't help myself, right? Too many years of being a sales manager. But what happens is, because we're familiar and she knows me, all my faults and everything, and loves me with all my faults and everything, at least most of the time anyway, what she has a tendency to do is associate what most recently happened in the relationship with the guidance and coaching I'm providing with her regarding her job, knowing full well that I've got 25 years of managing sales and getting phenomenal results. Still struggles with the fact that, I made her mad last night for whatever reason. Right. And so my point is that law of familiarity becomes a problem, even in a coaching relationship. And over time, the client has a tendency to, I won't say disregard, but it's almost like you grow to a certain point and you're like, I kind of know what I need to do. I don't need that coaching anymore. And then that circumstance that they weren't prepared for pops up and kicks them in the behind. And then they're like, oh yeah, maybe I wasn't ready. Right. So so the law of familiarity is one factor you have to consider. And then I think the other thing is too, that over time, similar to that, but slightly different, going back again to the martial arts analogy, you get your black belt and you think, oh, I've arrived. I got my black belt. I know how to kick butt. Right. Yeah. And the reality is that if you understand that the culture, the concepts around the achievement of a black belt, that's not the end. That's the new beginning.
Right.
There's 10 levels of black belts depending on what your style or whatever. But then in most styles, there's like so many layers of black belts over and beyond the color belt. So you get through the color belts, there's just as many black belts after you get past the black belt level. So it's the new beginning. It's like you've arrived, you learned all the basic core stuff, and now you learn the advanced stuff. Yeah. And so consequently in coaching, it's similar. Right. In the beginning, we're talking about sales and marketing and basic strategies and things like that. Well, later in the relationship, we'll likely be talking about asset allocation and strategic acquisitions and, where are we going to raise capital to take on this new division or, so now they're much more strategic and very high level conversations, but without that core base understanding of the things that we do that make the business run on a day-to-day basis. I can't go here. I can't teach you this.
Yeah.
Right. So the nature of the relationship changes over time. Right. And as the client builds on this and they evolve to that black belt level, we'll call it, so to speak. And now their next level, they're also all over again. They're the rookie on the next playing field.
Right.
Right. It's like it's going from college football to pro football, or, whatever analogy makes sense for you. But the idea is that you may be the best college player in all of college. You get into the pros, you're still a rookie. You may not even make the starting team.
Right.
Right. And so when you move to that next level of development, like for instance, you get over $1 million in gross revenue, there's a whole nother world.
Yeah.
Right. And what does that world look like? And if you don't have the business acumen, more specifically the financial, the understanding of finance and high level strategic alliances and things like that you can take advantage of to grow and scale your business, you're going to miss out and potentially be taken advantage of.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the things, just to elaborate on what you're talking about, right? The challenges are different when you're a $100,000 business, then you become $1 million business. But when you go from $1 million to a 10 million to 100 million, that target gets bigger and bigger and bigger for litigation and a number of other things. And you got to be ready for it. And one of the best ways to get ready is to work with a coach, right? To help you navigate, AAA to pro, right? And some of those jumps in between. So I think it's a great point.
Yeah, and you and I lived that with our last organization. Day one, year one, we did $1 million. We had 9 stores. Yep. And, I wasn't 9, but we started with 9 and then we built to like 15 or 18 or whatever it was. But, and then every year we're adding 20, 30 stores, whatever that was over that span of time. And eventually we get to 140 stores. There was a number of years in between where we just stayed stagnant for a while.
Yeah.
Because we had arrived to a certain level, and now we're like, okay, this is our new status quo, but our legs aren't completely underneath us yet. We're not 100% comfortable in this role yet. So let's give ourselves a year or two to get really stable, and then take on some more growth, right? Yeah. And a good coach is going to help people recognize those gaps as they hit those different plateaus and say, okay, we're plateauing and there's a reason. Let's step back and take a look at that and let's figure out why that is. Again, that takes an objective observer, not somebody who's emotionally attached to the business, because the emotionally attached person who's really ambitious and driven like me is going to be like, let's go open 30 more stores. Let's go open 30 more stores. And somebody like you would be like, Eric, slow down. Okay, hold on. Yeah. Our training's not good. Our sales per location isn't where it should be. Let's step back. Let's take a look at this before we go and jump further.
Yeah.
And I think those are really important things that owners need to understand. So what a good coach should bring to the table, and better yet, one of the things, as you referenced earlier, is with the group of coaches that we provide, we also can provide that relationship where, today you're working with me and I help you get to wherever you get to. You may determine that, okay, you know what, next we're looking for a financial specialist. And we just recently brought on a coach who's got years of experience in the finance world and high-level finance and raising capital and doing an IPO and all that kind of stuff. And we now have a coach that has a background and experience in that. Well, that's probably the next coach that you should be working with. And we can make that transition internally so that you now as a client are getting the best service from that.
Yeah.
Which is
that's a good point. Well, it even just variety never hurts either, right? I mean, if you've ever meal prepped, broccoli, chicken, brown rice every day gets a little boring. I mean, it's effective, right? It's super effective, but sometimes you want a little, burrito in there, fish taco, something, change it up a little bit. So it doesn't hurt to get a little variety with your coaching too.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that, one of the services that we're introducing as we get ready to round out this year, moving into next year, because we have clients that are getting ready for this and are going to benefit from this. We're going to offer, basically, it's like a pseudo board of directors.
Okay, cool.
So we'll have people that on a board of directors like myself, who as a generalist has a lot of experience in a lot of different areas with some background in accounting, but then we can also have an accounting specialist and we could have a legal specialist. We met Scott Roney a couple of weeks ago on the show, right? Scott's an ideal candidate to join our group as that legal counsel that can sit on a board and help these companies as they reach that $1 million threshold and start dealing with some of those bigger concerns and legal concerns that might come up. And we can address them on a proactive basis. On a quarterly basis, we meet with the owner and we talk through on a strategic level, okay, over the next 1, 2, 3 years, what are we planning on doing and what's that going to look like and what things should we plan for and make sure that we have in place. And so now we can use this pseudo board of directors to help them strategically plan as opposed to, react, which is often what small business owners end up having to do, is just react to circumstances.
So that's awesome. Yeah, it's a great new service offering there.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, cool. Well, Eric, just to kind of wrap things up for today's episode, if somebody's been listening to this, maybe they're interested in working with you or learning more about MyBizCoaches, kind of what does that process look like of engaging a coach with MyBizCoaches? Like, kind of walk us through that.
Yeah. So the action is make the phone call and or send an email, fill out the little info thing that you can fill out and submit to on the website there. But basically it's a little bit of information about your company, but it really leads to is a 45-minute consultation Could be 45 minutes, could be an hour and a half. If it's me, it might go 3 hours. It's not that it's ever happened before. But and that's, I say that in jest, but the reality is we've had them go. I took on my first law firm that I took on was a 3-hour consultation, and I was learning about the law as a business kind of application, and we hit it off. We had a lot of fun, but we came up with a whole bunch of different new business ideas that law firm could now execute on. But point is that during that consultation, we'd uncover some opportunities. We recognize some, we have, as I often reference, revenue gaps, opportunities to grow the business, scale the business that we can improve on. Opportunities where there's holes in the business where it's leaking, and we fix those things. We put together a proposal for you, and that proposal basically we use our proprietary software to uncover those opportunities. And when we're done, we actually offer you a plan. It's a 27-page plan that we literally hand you after the consultation. There's no cost for the consultation. And that 27-page plan, you can literally take and go execute on. So it's an investment of time on your behalf as a potential client to engage a coach and get some feedback on where we see the opportunities to improve your business, some opportunities to improve, right? Fix some pieces in your business. And we hand you that plan. Now, if you at that time you look at the plan and say this is a little overwhelming, might be a little unwieldy, I could use some guidance through this. That's when you can engage us as a coach, and we can talk about what that would look like at that point. But the whole idea is to get the consultation and allow us to show you where we see the opportunities, and at minimum, you walk away with a plan that you can go execute on if that's what you choose to do.
So let me just get this straight, Eric. Okay. I submit a form on your website, call or email.
Yep.
Spend 45 minutes with one of your coaches, and at minimum, I walked away with a 27-point plan of how I can improve my business, and it cost me nothing.
That's correct.
And then if I wanted help with it, I can then engage with one of your coaches or one of your many coaching solutions, group coaching, one-on-one courses at very affordable rates. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
All right, I just want to make sure I heard it right, because that seems like a pretty good deal. So that's just me. I don't know. Other people listening, watching may have a different point of view, but seems like
David, I have an opening for a salesperson if you're interested.
No. I was just making sure I understood it. That's all.
No, I appreciate it.
So awesome. Well, that sounds good. And Eric, just appreciate the insights today. Anything else you want to share that's new or happening at MyBiz Coaches? Obviously, you've shared some exciting stuff already, but anything else before we wrap up today?
No. As I've been teasing, we got some big stuff coming. I leaked a little bit right there of something we can anticipate here towards the end of the year. We should have enough of that in place to be able to offer that service. Cool. Bringing in new coaches. We just recently brought in another coach, so we're excited about that. As we grow and add more coaches, we're also looking for more clients. So we're going to ramp up our marketing efforts to scale beyond, where our primary focus has been. But lot more good things coming. I'll just say that. Really excited about a partnership that we're working on that we'll probably announce in, like I said, about 30 days. Lots of cool things coming. So I'm excited.
Cool. Awesome. Well, as always, Eric, great to hang out with you. Appreciate the insights today. And I think kind of fun. I mean, we talk about coaching all the time, but really take a deeper dive into when is the right time to get a coach? What's the value of a coach? What are some of the misconceptions about coaching? And then kind of what does it look like to engage a coach? So thanks for walking us through it.
Absolutely. Thanks, David, as always.
Okay, awesome. Hey, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Biz Coach Show.